Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 Valspar Data Dive Show. Per usual on a Monday night, we're going to take our first look at the forecast down in Palm Harbor, see if a wave advantage is developing, and also just take a wide look at the forecast, see if we need to target any wind specialists and anything like that. We are going to take a deep statistical dive into the Copperhead course, what metrics and shot types and types of players generally perform well around the Copperhead course. We'll identify which players in the field this week fit that model. We'll go and see who has performed the best around the Copperhead course. And then, of course, at the end of the show, I'll show you what research I posted to social media. Forewarning, it is very, very light. Considering there aren't a lot of patterns for the Valspar. So we have a lot to get into. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and moving forward are from both Fantasy National and the Rabbit Hole over at BetSperts. The Rabbit Hole is acquiring Fantasy National or merging with them. So I am in the process myself of migrating over to the Rabbit Hole. It's a long, tedious process, but nevertheless, I'm making my way through that. But make sure you go check out the Rabbit Hole. It has everything you need to make the correct wagers and build optimal lineups week in and week out on the PGA Tour. So go check out the Rabbit Hole. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where, like I just said, I did post some research regarding the past 8 winners of the Valspar Championship. Only 2 patterns, and they were very, very loose patterns. That tied them all together. Didn't narrow down the field all that much. So I'll show you that towards the end of the show. But if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see the players I've wagered with my own money, the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe, recommending it heavily, as I have for the past few years that I've been working with Gabe. Really is a great way to start your week of preparation. And by subscribing to that article, you're going to get his recent form and course history and deluxe version, which comes out early Wednesday, which has his projected ownerships. So make sure you subscribe to his article and show him some support as well, following over on social media. Lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. What do you think of the Valspar this week? Who's your early favorite? How do you think the course is going to play? And then anything with March Madness. If you want to jump into chat, have a little sparring session, if you will. You can tell that my fandom has arrived for this week, and it will stay on so long as they keep playing in the tournament. So you want to have a little bit of March Madness smack talk as well. I'm game for it. But we're mostly here for the Valspar, so put all of your thoughts and opinions in the chat. Would love to hear from you. If you're not able to catch a show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2026 Valspar. We're going to start, as we always do on a Monday night, with the extended forecast look over in Palm Harbor for the Valspar Championship. You see today, and actually right now, looks like they're getting hit with pretty decent amount of rain and wind. But it's going to dry out pretty quickly, I would think. I don't think there's been a whole lot of rain in the forecast, or in the area, I should say, in the weeks leading up to the tournament. And similarly, after what comes through today, doesn't look like there's any more rain in the forecast for the rest of the tournament week. Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we look at the tournament. Thursday looks like it could be pretty difficult in terms of rain, or excuse me, in terms of wind, as I center this camera, with sustained winds, in the mid-teens, gusts maybe reaching 20 at various points. So could be a little problematic and troublesome. Thursday, Friday looks pretty solid. Saturday looks amazing. High only of 70, so it looks like it is going to be a little chillier than what you might expect down in Florida for this time of year. And then Sunday looks great as well. So really about the only heavy amount of wind that we have in the forecast is for Thursday. But we'll keep an eye on it. We'll update this at the beginning of the show Wednesday night and see if indeed a wave advantage has developed or if there's more wind in the forecast, things of that nature. But as of right now, just looks like a pretty darn good week for golf down in Palm Harbor. Normally, we're going to go to the rabbit hole after looking at the weather. I am going to cover the strokes gained total page view or performance the past 5 years of the Valspar very quickly. As I was editing my video today, I realized that my software essentially just cut out the entire end of the show when I started to talk about this. I mentioned it all throughout the show last night, how I had some severe weather coming in. I don't know if that's what caused my streaming or the software to essentially cut the show. But let's cover this very, very quickly because I noticed that the software essentially stopped right when I came to this page view in Fantasy National last night. So your strokes gained total leader the past 5 years around the Valspar has been Justin Thomas, coming off of his rather impressive performance at the Players. He does have 2 top 5s here, including a runner-up last year to Victor Hovland. Another top 10, another top 15. So JT has been very solid around the Valspar the past 5 years. Again, Victor Hovland, our defending champion, finished top 5 a few years back. More of a middling performance in 2022, but he's been pretty solid here. Davis Riley has been good here with a runner-up, another top 10, another top 20. Xander has been extremely consistent and solid around the Valspar when he has come. He's only been here 3 times in the past 5 years, but nothing outside of a T12. So very, very solid, T5, T12, T12. Lucas Glover's been very good around here, especially the past couple of years. Billy Horschel's been very good here. Taylor Moore, very, very boomer bust. Win in 2023, another top 15, and 2 missed cuts. So completely Jekyll and Hyde in that regard. Keegan, very boomer bust. Runner-up in 2021 and 2 missed cuts. Corey Connors has been fairly solid in 2 tries here. Seamus Powler's been fairly solid in 2 tries. Sam Ryder, 3 for his last 3, including 2 top 20s. Adam Hadwin in the field this week. Top 5, top 10, 3 missed cuts. So if you're following the pattern, looks like it's another top 10 year for Adam Hadwin. Fitz, 1 for 2. Homa's only played here once, but it was a top 10. So there's a look at some of the players who have played the best around the Copperhead course the past 5 years. Players who haven't played well the past 5 years. Chad Ramey, 1 for 4. Lonto Griffin, 0 for 3. Andrew Putnam, 0 for 4. Let's see. David Lipsky's 3 for 4, but leaving a whole lot to be desired in terms of strokes gained total there. Rasmus Højgaard, 0 for 2. Charlie Hoffman, 1 for 4 with a top 20. Smalley, 1 for 4. Rafael Campos, 1 for 3. Bo Hostler has really struggled around here the past 5 years. J.J. Spawn has really struggled around here the last 5 years. Mark Hubbard, 0 for 2. Nick Taylor has a top 10, but very, very little else to go on. So there's a look at some of the players who have and have not been very good around the Copperhead course the past 5 years. Like I said, I wanted to make sure I started the show off this evening with my software essentially cutting this out of the show last night. So with that, now we're going to go over to the rabbit hole and bet spurts and do a couple of quick reviews here. I have actually not seen the salaries. So there's 3 players in the 10Ks, Xander, Victor, and Akshay. Makes a lot of sense. Fitzpatrick at 98. Anyway, that's just my curiosity since I've been fairly deep into the brackets today. Let's start with even though there was really only one day of significant wind. Dang it, January 1st. Let's do some wind performance. Considering wind can come up pretty consistently around the Copperhead course. So in the field this week, your top performers in moderate and windy conditions: Corey Connors, Xander, JJ Spawn, Jacob Bridgman, Nikolai Højgaard, Matt Fitzpatrick, Patrick Cantlay, Alex Smalley, Keegan, Ben Griffin, and Max McGreevy are your top 11 in terms of performance in moderate and windy conditions going back to the beginning of last year. The only other overarching or filter that we're going to use maybe a lot throughout tonight and the mixed condition model on Wednesday is this difficult scoring conditions. No doubt about it, the Valspar is pretty darn difficult. Par 3s, 4s, and 5s all play difficult. You'll get winning scores. 11 under is the defending champion, 12 under from Peter Malnati, 10. Now, Sam Burns kind of lit this place up because he was putting the ever-living daylights out at 17 under. But Paul Casey at 8, 10 under. So you're looking at very, very rarely are you getting into the mid-teens. So you're looking at low double-digit winning scores around the Copperhead course. So when scoring conditions are difficult and very difficult, your top performers in the field this week at the Valspar: Corey Connors, JJ Spawn, Victor, Keegan Bradley, Xander, Ryo Hitsatsune, Ben Griffin, Jordan Spieth, Bud Colley, and Rasmus Nergard Peterson. Just because we didn't get a chance to look at it last night, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the Copperhead course in relation to the average PGA Tour course, and then we're going to do that as well in Microsoft Excel. You can see around Copperhead, it is very difficult to gain strokes off the tee. This has a couple of different reasons for it, with the dog legs and forced layup nature of quite a few of the holes around here. Players are just kind of hitting it to the same spot. Very rarely are players taking driver and trying to overpower this course. It's not really possible. So it's very hard to gain strokes off the tee. Good drive percentages down. Distance is way down. Distance does not matter here at the Valspar at all. Driver usage is heavily down, 33% less. So not a whole lot to go with off the tee wise, other than maybe this good drives gained metric. We could also look at some distance from edge of fairway stuff, considering it's a lot more difficult here as well. Whoopsie, my apologies. But really kind of the same formula that we saw at Sawgrass last week. You're just going to try to keep it in the fairway to try to hit these greens, which are extremely difficult to hit. Green percentage 25% less here. It's hard to gain strokes on approach. It's hard inside 150, hard outside 150. It's actually, relative to the average PGA Tour course, easier to hit the green from the rough than from the fairway. That just shows you just how difficult these greens are here at the Valspar. Missed fairway penalty margins not all that high. Average approach distance is actually slightly longer than the average tour course. Approach shots, you get a big plethora from 175 and 200 plus. 20% from 175 to 200. 32% come from 200 plus, where these players are laying back quite a bit off the tee into these longer par fours that are dog legs. I don't know the course inside and out, but for example, if the par four third is a dog leg, you can see maybe a 260 yard drive, set up with an iron to a long iron approach shot that's about 195, 200 yards. We got a couple of ranges to look at there for proximities. Again, looking at the 175 and perhaps the 200 plus. Some other things here statistically with Innisbrook. Proximity, roughly the same, actually a little bit closer than the average tour event. Rough proximity is closer than the average tour event, but fairways is a little bit more difficult. Birdie or better, a lot harder here. Players don't go for the green nearly as often. Around the green is about the only scenario where or shot type that is easier than the tour average course. Around the green, you see 30% easier here. Proximity is a lot closer. Scrambling's a lot easier. You get majority of your around the green shots are from the rough, almost 50%. Unlike sawgrass, where it was almost 50% short grass, now it's from the rough. So maybe we look at some around the green rough statistics tonight. It's an idea. Putting not overly difficult here at the Copperhead course. 3-putt percentage is a lot less. Putting overall, just minuscule, slightly harder than the average tour event. Scoring much harder here. Par 3 scoring is difficult. Par 4 scoring, par 5 scoring, all of it's much more difficult. So there's a look at what we did not have access to last night in terms of some course statistics here in the rabbit hole. Now we're going to look at roughly that same data in a different way here in Microsoft Excel. These are performances the past 5 years for players that have finished in the top 30 as opposed to the entire field. This is just gathering top 30. You see putting has been really the name of the game the past 5 years, along with some iron play, although the iron play has been a little bit more inconsistent. Putting has been pretty consistent. Off the tee and around the green, roughly the same, which we saw that last night in Fantasy National. If we look at against the average full field course, however, you see, again, off the tee, not a big deal here. We'll look at some good drives gained, but there's not a whole lot here. Distance absolutely does not matter. This is one of the lower distance markers, along with the Charles Schwab and like the PGA National. Distance doesn't really matter. Sony distance has started to matter a little bit more, but not as much. So we're going to be taking a look at mostly irons, putting, obviously, maybe a little bit of around the green, although around the green is a lot easier here. But we might take a look at it just because players are going to be using that skill set a little more often than you might think, because these greens are pretty hard to hit. But the main gist of the week, keep the ball in play. Fairways, look at this good drives gain number, 30% more important. Greens, 12%. It's just a lot about accuracy here in terms of success around the Copperhead course, particularly hitting greens, good drives, which hitting greens is a part of. We look at scoring. A lot of times the higher raw number is in birdies, but the more consistent metric is bogeys. Here, it's actually both bogeys. The higher raw number and the more consistent metric is bogey avoidance. So that is exactly what we're going to be looking at. Par is generally a good score even on one of the par 5s here at the Copperhead course. One par 5 is not an automatic birdie, so bogey avoidance is going to be very, very strong this week. Something we're definitely going to want to take a strong look at. We'll look at some heavy emphasis in par threes, even though this didn't say or show that much in Fantasy National last night. 26% more important. That's to be expected, honestly, because there are 5 par threes. There's just more par threes around here. So it makes sense that they're going to play an oversized or enhanced role in how and who plays well. So mostly looking at the 175 to 200. The vision will be skewed, but I do want to see the scorecard here. 195, 235 will never come down to that length. 200 easily could fall in the 175 to 200. 215's kind of stuck in the 200 to 225. So kind of depends on how they set up the course in terms of tees and pins. But we might take a look at 175 to 200, but in specifics. But mostly it is just full-on par threes with 5 of them here, which means that the par fours are kind of mitigated. Not a whole lot here. It's just all in the 400 to 450. 5 of the 10 half fall to this range, and you see they have played in excess in terms of importance the past 5 years. So probably going to look at some just 400 to 450 par fours, but that can be a little bit misleading with the forced layup nature, the dog legs. The players are still going to have some mid to long irons even on these holes, just because the fairways are so narrow, they're so tight that players, professionals know they're going to have to club down and keep the ball in play to try and maneuver and meander their way through the Copperhead course. So even though there's a plethora of 400 to 450 par fours, that doesn't mean there's a whole lot of wedges around here. There really isn't. And then par fives, mostly in the 550 to 600, but you're going to have to score on these just like anywhere. With 4 par fives and a very difficult course, you got to get your birdies somewhere. We'll take a look at a little bit of par 5 performance. And then proximities. The raw numbers here won't say a whole lot, but if we compare them against the full field course average, you see the longest 3, 150 to 200 plus. So Rabbit Hole had 175 and 200 plus. XL here is showing a little bit in the 150 to 175. Okay. 75 to 100 is probably slightly misleading because there's not a lot of approach shots that come from that range. So there's a look at some deep statistical dive and data historically, at least the past 5 years, around the Copperhead course. We'll move back over to the Rabbit Hole and let's take a look at a couple of things here and go through the players in the field this week. We'll start with off the tee, and like I said, I'm just kind of looking at good drives here. Good drives when it's difficult. Yeah, let's go ahead and start with that. Your top good drive percentage players when scoring is difficult and very difficult. Austin Smotherman, again, it's just 4 rounds. It looks like it's the players. Yep, it's just this last week's players. So very small sample size. Be aware of that. Aaron Rye, S.H. Kim, John Perry, Corey Connors, Lucas Glover, Takumi Kanaya, Max McGreevy, Marco Pinge, and Rasmus Nergard Peterson are your top 10 in terms of good drive percentage when scoring is difficult and very difficult. Just be aware of the small sample size here on Smotherman and S.H. Kim and John Perry. I mean, even Pinge and RNP have a little bit of smaller sample size. So just be aware of that. Let's take a look at good drive percentage when, I guess, gaining off the tee. Oh, no, we did this last night. Let's do it again. Good drive percentage when are on less than driver off the tee courses. Hey, good evening, Hanka. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you are ready for the Valspar. Hopefully your Players Championship went a whole lot better than mine. Mine was an unmitigated disaster. Give any look to Nick Taylor. Nick Taylor, let's... I forget what he did or what he has done here. Not that it's the most important, but generally keeps the ball in front of him. Decent putter, obviously. A little worried here. The putter has gone cold the past 3 events. You can see that there, Hanka. He's been really good around the green. I am normally a little shy about this because this is a little bit of some smoke and mirrors. And it's not that he's, threatening to win either. It's, one top 25, maybe a couple of top 30s. The irons have been good. The irons have been pretty solid the last 5 events. It's not the worst. Here at the Valspar, he has a top 10 couple years, or 3 years ago to be exact. A couple more top 25s. I don't think it's the worst idea, Hanka. But it's not somebody I gravitated towards immediately. I think is probably the best way I would classify that, I guess. But thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Lost my train of thought there for a second. Your top good drive performers on courses that are less than driver off the tee: Zach Blair, Jimmy Stanger, Aaron Rye, Matt Fitzpatrick, Lucas Glover, Christopher Raytan, Austin Smotherman, Ricky Castillo, Ben Griffin, and Doug Gim. Your top 10 in terms of good drives there. The only other thing that we might include in the mixed condition model is this distance from edge of fairway. Very similar to other Florida courses. It's not going to kill you if you are a step or 2 off of the fairway. It's really, when you start hitting massive foul balls when you get into trouble. So your top distance from edge of fairway players in the field for the Valspar this week: Takumi Kanaya, Kinsei Harada, Lucas Glover, Matt Fitzpatrick, Bryce Garnett, Jeremy Paul, Corey Connors, Lee Hodges, Austin Smotherman, and Hank Lebioda. Like I said, I'm definitely going to have a pretty good amount of good drive percentage here, but I'm a little wary of just looking at driving accuracy, considering most of these players are going to be clubbing down. And professionals, now a little different story if it were you or me, professionals are 99% of the time going to hit the fairway with irons and 3-woods in their hand. So that's why I'm a little cautious on using just driving accuracy. But if you wanted to look at that metric, that is the top 10, your top 10 driving accuracy players so far in 2026. Like I said, I don't see a whole lot of correlation here. Like Andrew Putnam's been really bad around here. Lipsky's been pretty bad around here. Aaron Rye was really bad in his one try, and these are all guys that are at the top of the driving accuracy. We look at approach. Definitely going to look at a lot of strokes gained approach this week. Your top approach players in the field this week at the Valspar, at least early on in 2026: Austin Smotherman, Brooks Koepka, Akshay Bhatia, Matt Fitzpatrick, Zheng Do or Marty Doe, Victor Hovland, David Ford, Ryo Itsatsune, Nikolai Højgaard, and Xander. To your point, Hanka, Nick Taylor, down here in the top 30. So, not horrible by any means. So that's promising. But we're going to have quite a bit in strokes gained approach. Definitely want to look at greens. And we'll look at greens when... We'll look at it in a couple different ways. First, let's look at greens when scoring is difficult. by far, in a way, this is going to be very difficult. Hey, good evening, AD. Thanks for jumping to chat. Much appreciated. Every time Nick Taylor wins, he never has the best form going in, so I'm considering Nick Taylor this week, at least in DFS. That's probably not a bad thought process. I mean, 8,400. Again, these prices are kind of new to me. I've been more focused on March Madness and brackets today. 8,400. It'd be a little bit different if he was priced in the 9Ks or something, but I don't necessarily hate that. I don't think. It's just Nick Taylor wasn't one of the guys that popped into my head when I started thinking about the Valspar, if that makes sense. But good observation, AD. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. I hope your Players' Championship went a whole lot better than mine. Not a very high bar to cross because mine was an unmitigated disaster. But hopefully you had more success than I did. And if it was a bad week, we're going to try and turn it around for the Valspar this week. Definitely want to look at greens. Greens are not a given around Innisbrook and the Copperhead course specifically. Your top players at hitting greens when scoring is difficult. Austin Smotherman, again, very small sample size. RNP, small sample size. John Perry, Aaron Rai, Corey Connors, JJ Spawn, Xander, Victor, Marco Pinge, and Akshay Bhatia. Another way we can look at this is to look at who hits greens when hitting greens are difficult. Because hitting these greens is pretty difficult. So when green in regulation accuracy, where is that? Fairway, green in regulation, difficult. Aha. So when hitting greens are simply difficult, your top players at hitting greens: Austin Smotherman, RNP, Corey Connors, Aaron Rai, Rio Itsatsune, Patrick Cantlay, JJ Spawn, Marco Pinge, Dylan Wu, and Max McGreevy. So we're going to have a lot in this page view here come Wednesday night in the mixed condition model. We'll take a look at approach proximities. Two different ranges here. We'll look at the 150 to 200 and the 200 plus. So we're looking at basically these two columns here. I'll sort first on the 150 to 200, and I'm going to bring this sample size in. So early in 2026, your top performers from 150 to 200 yards. And again, I really wish it was a 175 to 200. There is in the fairway. We might look at fairway 175 to 200, but you take a look here, just very quickly at the whole or the course detail, I suppose is what I would call it. What do they call it? Course fact page in the rabbit hole. Majority of your approach shots, 200 plus, 32% of them. Another 20% come from 175 to 200. There are a few 250 plus. That's really kind of par 5 stuff there. So I don't think we need to quite look at 250 plus. I would think par 5s would cover it, but maybe not. Maybe we look at 250 as well. Your top 150 to 200 overall players, rough or fairway, early in 2026, Victor Hovland, Henrik Norlander, ADDC, Andrew Novak, Davis Thompson, AJ Ewert, Matt Fitzpatrick, Mac Meisner, Nick Dunlap, and Emiliano Grillo. The only ones of those that are in the top 10 for 200 plus is Henrik Norlander. Brooks Koepka, 11th in both, just outside the top 10 in both. Overall 200 plus, Henrik Norlander, Chandler Blanchet, Zach Blair, Danny Willett, Neil Shipley, RNP, Michael Brennan, Thorbjorn Olsen, Rasmus, and Nikolai Højgaard. So, interesting to note that. Don't know if we'll do... Yeah, I don't know. Let's take a look at fairway. The only reason I'm a little concerned with using fairway 175 to 200 is that it's not a guarantee these players are going to be in the fairway. Hitting the fairway is difficult. Off the tee, difficult. Fairway accuracy is average, and that's with players clubbing down. So it's just not a given that these players are going to be in the fairway. Good drive percentage, much less. Distance from edge of fairway stuff is much less. Like, with all the dog legs and stuff, we'll take a look at it, but I'm probably leaning 150 to 200 and 200 plus. But your top performers early in 2026 from the fairway, 175 to 200 yards out. Norlander, Lauer, David Lipsky, Davis Thompson, Luke Clanton, Marco Pinge, Victor McMeisner, J.J. Spawn, A.J. Ewert, and Wyndham Clark. If we look at rough, 175 to 200. Thorbjorn Olesen, Sung Jae, Matt Wallace, Patrick Fishburne, Rafael Campos, Nick Dunlap, Dan Brown, Brooks, Luke Clanton, and Johnny Kiefer. So I have a lot to think about in terms of how I want to use the proximities when I build the mixed condition model come Wednesday night. Fortunately, I don't have to make that decision tonight. I have a little bit of time to think on it. We're not going to ignore the around the green. Majority of your approach shots come from the rough here at the Copperhead course. So when the rough is long, like it will be for the Valspar, your top around the green players in long rough, Andrew Putnam, a little bit concerning because he has been horrendous around the Valspar. Sungjae, Patton Kazire, Bo Hostler has been really bad around here too. Sahith Theegala, Jordan Spieth, Keegan, Eric Cole, Davis Riley, and Matt Kuchar. So a little bit interesting there. Like, Hostler's been bad, Putnam's been bad, Keegan's been pretty bad, although he does have a runner up here. Davis Riley's been very good around here, so maybe not the best. Justin Thomas has been excellent around here. There's Chat's shout for now. Nick Taylor been pretty good in long rough, so a little good, little bad with that. Will not ignore putting by any means. So we're looking at Poa Trivialis Overseed. So bear with me as I bring those courses in. We start with Harbor Town, Innisbrook, Memorial Park, Pete Dye Stadium Course, Quail Hollow, and the TPCs, San Antonio, Sawgrass, Scottsdale. Your top putters on Poa Trivialis Overseed, going back several years to make sure, players have enough rounds. Jacob Bridgman, Matt Kuchar, Denny McCarthy, Ben Griffin, Chad Ramey, Seabass, Christian Bezadenhout, Billy Horschel, Bo Hostler, Akshay Bhatia, and Xander. Interesting. Sam Ryder used to be very high on this list. Has he putt so bad that he's fallen down that much? I thought he was in the field here. 1-1-22. Well, he just might not be in the field. I thought he was, though. Anyway, sorry, that's just more curiosity on my part. So there's your top putters on Poa Trivialis in the field this week. Let's look at... Gosh dang it, that is not what I wanted to do. Bring this back in 2020. Yeah, let's just look at 2026, because I want to look at some par threes. Actually, no, I apologize. Scoring first. We're absolutely going to be looking at birdie and bogey avoidance, or birdies gained and bogey avoidance when scoring is difficult. So your top birdie getters when rounds are difficult or scoring is difficult: John Perry, Justin Thomas, Dan Brown, Akshay, Victor Hovland, Luke Clanton, Sahith Theegala, Nikolai Højgaard, Matty Schmidt, and Corey Connors. So, again, pars are going to be really good scores this week, but you're not going to win at even par. You might be inside the top 20, but you're not going to win. So you're going to have to get a few birdies around here. Not a whole lot of eagles to be had, but there are some birdies around. So you can make sure the guys can at least get a few birdies. But the biggest thing we need to look at is bogey avoidance. Your top bogey avoiders when scoring is difficult. Austin Smotherman, Webb Simpson. Again, very, very small sample sizes on those two. Vince Whaley, Corey Connors, Mac Meisner, Ricky Castillo, Matt Kuchar, Ryo Itatsune, Alex Smalley, Adrian Sadier, and Danny Willett. Now we'll go into par 3s. And remember, this is a par 71 with 5 par 3s. So these par 3s are going to carry a pretty solid amount of importance on who is going to end up at the top of the leaderboard at the end of the week. Your top par 3 performers early in 2026 in the field this week: Taylor Moore, Blades Brown, Justin Thomas, Austin Smotherman, Nikolai Højgaard, Stefan Jaeger, Jeremy Paul, Patrick Rogers, Seamus Power, David Skins, and Patton Kizzire. And then the most important range is the 176 to 200. David Skins, Paul Peterson, Taylor Moore, Jaeger, Norlander has played that range very well. Grazerman, Jackson Suber, Zachary Bauschow, Patton Kizzire, and Doug Gim. Looking at par 4s, it's all in the 401 to 450. Clanton, Lipsky, Fitzpatrick, Corey Connors, Sung Jae, Seabez, Patrick Rogers, Rayton, Brooks, Sahith, McCarty, Taylor Moore. Okay. All right. Let's go switch gears now to Microsoft Excel and take a look at performance at the Copperhead course the past 5 years. You see, Max Homa's only played once, but it was a T6. Putt well, hit his irons well. Xander's probably been the most consistent performer who's played here multiple times. He's been field average in terms of putting. His irons have been immaculate around here. Brooks only one time. Victor Hovland, defending champion, has put the ever-living daylights out here and also hit the irons well. So let's take a look at a few of these metrics and see how players have performed specifically at the Copperhead course the past 5 years. So your leading iron performer, Xander, RNP is just one time. Victor Hovland, Mac Meisner, in 2 tries has hit his irons exceptionally well. Bud Cauley, Justin Thomas, Chandler Phillips, Corey Connors, Eric Cole, 2 for 3, hit his irons well. Hadn't done a whole lot else great, but has hit his irons amazingly well here. Jordan Spieth, Billy Horschel, Castillo, EVR, Streelman. Like Charlie Hoffman has not made a single putt, but has hit his irons well. That's probably contributing to his 1 for 4. So there's a look at the top iron players the past 5 years in the field this week at the Valspar, or how they've performed specifically at the Valspar. Let's take a look at putting. Definitely want to see who's putt well around here. Homa's just one time. Pavone's one time. Look at that. Victor Hovland. Of the players who have played it multiple times in the past 5 years, Hovland is your leading putter. Quite interesting to see that. Bridgman, only 1 for 2, but hit it very well. Hughes, doing Mackenzie Hughes things. Good short game. Poor ball striking. Matt Kuchar. Kizzire, 3 for 3. Pretty good combination there. Good putting. Good with the irons. Acceptable off the tee. Just around the green hadn't been great. Davis Riley, been really, really good around here. Ryo Itatsune. Seamus Power. Hadwin's putt well around here. Fitzpatrick's putt well here. So there's some of your top, even Akshay has putt well here in 2 tries. So there's a look at your top putters. We'll go to, let's just go all the way to bogey avoidance. Top bogey avoiders around here. I'll look at Birdie's game too. Like RNP is one time. Billy Horschel, Corey Connors, Victor Hovland, Fitz, Lucas Glover, 4 for 4. Lucas Glover, interesting. Justin Thomas, Xander, of course, Seamus Power, Brooks, it's just one time. Bud Cauley, Smotherman a little bit further down here, 2 for 2. But there's your top bogey avoiders. Last thing I want to look at is par 3s. Who has played the par 3s the best past 5 years at the Valspar? Eric Cole. That explains a whole lot there. Why he's had a lot of success. He's the leading par 3 performer. S.H. Kim's 2 for 2 here. There's Victor again. Akshay, Matty Schmid 2 for 3. Leaving a lot to be desired in terms of top-end finish. But still 2 for 3 and making the cut. Chandler Phillips, Bridgman, Fitzwhaley, EVR, Seabez. A little bit further down here, Billy Horschel, Seamus Power, Davis Riley, JT, Sahith. So, all right. Sort on best average finish. And again, not a whole lot in terms of commonalities between the winners. Particularly if I go back to 2016, that is when the course had its last major renovation, was 2015 going into 2016. So that's why you see the dotted line there. But let's start with the winner matrix. You see, or this is gathering performance these champions had at the Valspar leading into their win. Charles Schwartzel had never played it, wins. Adam Hadwin, very little success, and then wins. Paul Casey had very little success, and then wins. It's a very common theme here. Now, Sam Burns had generally played pretty well at the Valspar before his 2 wins in 21 and 22. Taylor Moore, only try was a miscut. You see Peter Malnati was very poor and then wins. So it's not very consistent in terms of predictability, meaning past success leading to future, or past performance leading to future success. Not very predictive. Victor was good here, but he didn't even play it for 2 years and then wins last year. So not a whole lot to go on there in terms of course history. So it's going to have a very, very small part in my rankings come Wednesday night. Let's take a look at these champions' most recent performance. Almost all of them played the Players previously. The Heritage is only win the crazy schedule of 2021. The Valspar got moved to April or even early May, but it didn't really play all that different, so I'm okay including this. Most of your former champions made the cut their previous time out, but there's not a whole lot of like overwhelming consistency here. You know, you had a T68 from Peter Malnati at the Players. Taylor Moore was a T35. A couple guys missed the cut in their most recent event. Now, the last 5 champions at the Valspar gained on approach their previous time out. I didn't include it just because it really lost its consistency the further back you went. But that is a small pattern there that the last 5 winners gained on approach their previous event. It's something. It's not great, but it's something. But there's just not a whole lot of consistency here among previous winners, other than maybe performance with the 175 to 200 par 3s. The only thing that was true, if we take a look at the winner form, that means like the performance of these champions in the build-up to the Valspar. Victor was not playing very well, but he still had a top 25. That's highlighted in blue. Yellow is the putting surface, so the players, TPC Scottsdale, Pete Dye Stadium course. I was looking to see if there was any consistency with putting. You know, there's a minus 0.7, there's a plus 1.6, plus 1.6. Sam Burns always putt well, 4.4. But like Sam Burns the year prior lost at the Valero and lost at the Players. Paul Casey lost bunches at the Players. So I mean, it wasn't a whole lot to go on there. So you can kind of ignore the yellow. I just kept it color coded because I wanted to see something about Poa Trivialis. I want to direct your attention here to the blue. Victor Hovland at least had a top 25. Peter Malnati, even though he was seemingly a random winner 2 years ago, he had 2 top 15s early on in that calendar year. So he was playing pretty well. Taylor Moore, 3 top 15s. Sam Burns had 2 top 20s. Sam Burns, 2 top 20s. Paul Casey the second time, 3 top 20s, including 2 top 5s. So all of your champions, going back to 2016, again, I'm cutting it off at 2016 because that's when the last major renovation was. All of your champions had at least 1 top 25. Like 7 or 8 of the 9 had multiple top 20s. So anybody that you're thinking about, particularly wagering, like the outright market, I would make sure that they have had at least a couple of top 25s, preferably multiple top 20s early on this year, going back to the Sony. And ideally, now Charles Schwartzel is the outlier here, but ideally they've also played the Valspar. They didn't have to perform well. Like you see Taylor Moore miss the cut and then wins. Malnati had never had a lot of success here and then wins. But they've at least played here before. So those were the only 2 kind of criteria that I had seen in my research today. So not a whole lot to go on. And even so, with these 2 criteria, having played Valspar before and multiple top 20s, it cut the field down to like 40-something players. That's not enough of a limiting factor for me to go and try and suggest anybody. But those are the 2 patterns that I had seen for champions of the Valspar. That's going to be it for a Data Dive show this evening. I want to thank Hanka and AD for jumping into chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel, liking the videos, commenting, subscribing. Always appreciated. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. The Players was a horrendous performance for yours truly. I'm going to try and get back to the way it was at the Cognizant and the API, having a little success with outrights and a lot of success in DFS. So we're going to try and get back on the right foot this week. Feel free to throw your fandom into chat or into the comments. I'm going to be wearing my fandom all throughout March Madness until they get beat. Hopefully that's not until, next year sometime. We'll see. I'm going to have my fandom on. Feel free to put your fandom into chat. And then, Wednesday night we'll be live for the DFS Tactics show. Feel free to ask any March Madness questions you have on that too. Be more than happy to give you a statistician and data person's view of March Madness, mostly focused on the Valspar, but we'll have some time for March Madness if you want as well. So thanks again for all the support. Very much appreciated. For all of the wagers you've made so far this week for the Valspar, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Valspar, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.